Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I present to you Scrub Zero. We now we're through 7 games. This is obviously going to be put out before the Monday night game, so 7 games for the Giants. My thoughts on them and where I think things are going to go from here now. First and foremost, I wish to say the Giants have been a disappointment to this point in the season. I thought they would be better off. I thought this was a team that could possibly be a 4-3, even 5-2. And quite honestly, you can look at 3 of the games they've lost, and you could really say, hey, they could be 4-3 or even 5-2. But they're not. They have been a disappointment. The run game has been non-existent, though they did a decent job sticking with it against the Panthers. Run game hasn't been good. The pass game has been hit and miss. Mostly because of the protection more than even the quarterback, but I'll elaborate on that in a second. Guys haven't been healthy on the offensive side of the ball. They've been getting banged up from various types of injuries even before the season started. And you look at defensively, they have been a disappointment in coverage in the run game as well. Now, some of it has picked up in recent weeks, but last week it looked better, but that was the Panthers. And they've had moments throughout the season where they've looked solid, but then it goes back to being a disappointment. Talent-wise, the New York Giants football team should be better off. They should at least have 4 wins at this point. They do not. They have 2 wins. And it's situational football. Like, you can basically look back at situations in all their games as to why they've lost. For every game they've lost, you can look back to excerpt situation and see, this ain't the team. The sad part is that they're still alive for a wild card. I think they're too far out. It's not impossible, but I think they fell too far behind in the division race. Now, all that's will depend on the health of Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys. If he plays, and I hope he does, because I want to see the brother do well. That's not. I'm just talking as a fan of football and a fan of the brother man. I want to see him do well. If for some reason, whether if he's somehow too injured to play, if he misses X amount of games, that could turn around because the Cowboys are nothing without him. They're not a good team. They may win a game or two, but they're without Dak Prescott, their team is they're a bad team. Quite honestly, he gets the offense organized. He gets the team playing better than what they probably are. So without him, that would be the only chance the Giants have to win the division. Now they could still get a wild card spot because remember it's 7, not 6 anymore. And the issue is that they've lost. They've already lost to the Atlanta Falcons, who are surprisingly 3-3. They came up. They're off their bye. They're playing a game against. I think I forget who they're playing against. My mistake. Still out of it, but they got a game. I think I picked them to win. I forget who they're going against, but I expect them to win that game. So they'll probably be 4-3. Like, that's the team to worry about as far as the wild card. Two is coming out the West. and most likely 2 from the South. So, the South could have 3 if the Falcons continue playing, getting wins. Now, I still think they're not a good team, but for as not a good team as they've been, they have won games. They lost a few they probably should have lost. They shouldn't have lost, and they won a few maybe they shouldn't have won. But even with all that, the Giants are not too far out of it. That they can still got a wild card spot, and that's the damning part about the season. That's what most frustrates me, because it's like these Giants aren't bad enough to go away, but they haven't been good enough to establish themselves as a postseason, as a playoff, as a team that can contend for a playoff spot. Not for I'm just talking about getting themselves in the playoffs. They've shown too much poorly. Now, as it pertains to Daniel Jones, because I do want to get into that. Daniel Jones, I have had my issues with him. I still have issues with him. But some of it is him, because listen, you know what your line is, or what it's not, and they are not having Andrew Thomas is killing them right now. No, I'll say this: Matt Peart had a decent game last week. He wasn't bad, but I don't know if he's a guy you can really count on going forward. If he plays like he did last week, at least, then he would be a guy you could say, all right, we could have him on that right side opposite Andrew Thomas, and it'll be all right. But they've lost a lot of key players, and the thing that worried me, I don't know if I said this before the season started, as far as it pertains to the offensive line, but the biggest thing that always worried me was the interior. Like, I knew the tackles, it wasn't ideal, but I'm like, I think the tackles will hold up for the most part. It was the interior that I had more concerns about. And when the Giants kept making moves for interior alignment, something told me, I'm like, this interior could be a big problem. And to this point, it really has been. Nate Solder has done no favors on that right side as of late, though. But with Andrew Thomas, it didn't look as bad, but that interior is awful. And Daniel Jones, my thing with him is consistency, because he'll have the games like against New Orleans and Carolina, where he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. And I know the counting numbers wasn't great against Carolina, but I will say he did play well. I would give him a B-. The reason I give him the minus is because I think, in fact, no, I give him B- because there were like just the 203 yards on 23 of 33, but he didn't put the ball in harm's way, and he made the plays when he had to. But that first half just wasn't good. Like, they were so off. That's why that's why I gave him a minus instead of a plus. I wasn't even be a plus. It would just been a B. But against New Orleans, I gave him a B plus because he missed some throws that, it wasn't in harm's way of the defense. It still wasn't. It was easy opportunities he missed in that game that held him. That even with the 402 and the game-winning drive, I couldn't give him an A. I would have liked to, but he hasn't shown that kind of performance. Everyone talks about Washington, but he missed some plays in that game. Some of that was his teammates, but some was him. He put the ball in harm's way in that game. The Falcons saw issues again. He put the ball on the ground. The Cowboys, he put himself in harm's way and got himself injured. So that did him no favors. They were obviously worse off without him on the field. And we saw against the Rams, he had no chance. Like, the first play of the game, he fumbled, and it's like, here we go. And some of that's him. Like, he's the quarterback, so he chose the majority of the blame. But this team isn't good. The offensive line isn't good. And I was even more worried about that than the receivers. Like, listen, I like Kenny Golladay is nice and all. Same as Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. But can they protect this guy? And until they prove they can consistently protect him, I don't know. It's hard to really evaluate Daniel Jones as far as how good or how bad he is. I honestly don't know. But I don't know how good or how bad he is. He's shown some good. He's shown some bad. I can't really grade him have a true grade until really the end of the season. What I will say is that I don't see unless the Giants get like a Cam or Deshaun Watson, I don't think they weren't really in the race for that. But unless you get someone who can really flip your fortunes, that really can lift the team, I don't think you move on from Daniel Jones at this point in time. I don't think even going into next season you move on from him, because I don't think there's anyone who's really like. Listen, the Giants, they're gonna do what the Giants do. Don't expect them to make a move for Cam Newton. They probably should, but they won't. Be that as it may, I don't see them making a move off of Daniel Jones, because I don't see anyone who gives you. I don't see anyone really in the draft or anything like that that really that would give you a better shot than what he gives you right now. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but Daniel Jones has not been. He's been an issue, but compared to a lot of the other issues on the team, he hasn't been the biggest issue. I have a bigger issue with the coaching. Now, obviously, there's as much as I want to just give Jason Garrett the boot and whatnot, I must say this. The one thing Daniel Jones finally got this season that he didn't have in past seasons is the same offensive coordinator. I think because of that he has looked better. I think if they had a line, the offense would look better than what it has been. Because they don't have a good line. They're Jason Garrett's play calling has been getting exposed for the most part. Even the screens have been poorly executed all year long. He's tried a few trick plays. He finally got one off that looked good. The pass to Daniel Jones, it was executed. It wasn't the greatest, but they got the play off, and Daniel Jones made a good catch. So hats off to her. My apologies. Hats off to him for that. They scored on that drive, and they really never looked back because they got scoring again, and that was pretty much the end of Carolina. Yeah, having the same coach, I think, does help Daniel Jones. As much as we all may have our complaints about it, if you think Daniel Jones is the guy, you might as well stick with the same guys. I don't see where you can upgrade right now as far as the quarterback position, outside of Cam Newton or maybe even a Russell Wilson. But beyond that, I don't think you're gonna get any kind of upgrade. And a lot of the word has been like, barring something wild like what happened with Ben McAdoo, Joe Judge is gonna be here next season. That's just what it is. I don't know about Dave Gettleman, but everyone thinks he should go. I don't disagree with that. I just don't know if John Mara is gonna make that move. Now, depending on how the rest of the season goes, he may not. But the Giants need, first of all, well, not even first of all, but one thing I did take note of that I seen floating around, because Logan Ryan made these comments was about the field and about how bad it is, which means the Giants need to do something with that field. because too many injuries have been going on. And quite honestly, if you look back at in past years, a lot like the Giants have been at or near the top of all the injury list every year for like the past 10 years. Like, maybe I'm exaggerating in that regard, but I've always looked and like they always get a bunch of guys banged up at the worst times. So I do have concerns with that. As far as the defense, it's execution. They gotta cover. They have to cover. They have to cover, and they have to finish these rushes. I think it has a lot of feel that this team was built to um this defense was really built to play with a lead more than play a close game because they haven't really been good close. Um, Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see how that goes as it continues on. I think one of the bigger losses, which happened during the offseason, was Dalvin Tomlinson. Say what you want, but as far as getting a consistent pass rush, he was one of your guys that could do that, whether you were in the base defense, so the 34, or even in the nickel packages. He could get pressure. He wasn't getting sacks, but he was generating consistent pressure from that inside spot. And you moved on from him, and that interior has been weak since. Now, obviously, there were games last season where the Giants were run on, but you talking about teams that were actually committed to running the ball. Those are team like that had the dynamic quarterback or just or good offensive line. That's really the teams that got after the Giants in the run game. This year it feels like, aside from last week, that every team was just running on the Giants at will. Like, it wasn't good. Losing Blake Martinez didn't help, but the Giants' defense wasn't really playing too great before he left. So I know his impact not having him certainly hurts. I just don't like. My mindset is you weren't playing too great with him anyway. Like, it's more so, and like you just wish you had him because Reggie Ragland's giving you nothing. Tate Crowder is inconsistent. He tries. Like I said, you rather him as your second inside linebacker as opposed to the primary. But he's made the calls and whatnot. He's been solid. James Bradbury is playing better. Same for Dory Jackson, but it's still not good enough. Jabril Peppers out for the year with I think ACL rupture and high ankle sprain. He hadn't been playing well until he actually started playing. He was playing well last week, but then he got injured, and there you go. So what do you do now? Well, Xavier McKinney's played well. He just hasn't finished plays, and Logan Ryan's been okay, I guess. The question is, is their third round pick, because you already lost for Darius Williams for the year, but can Aaron Robinson come back and give you something in that where you can really use those that nickel package, because they really, for whatever reason, they've been avoiding playing Darnay Holmes, and I don't understand it. But listen, I need to defend about this. I honestly need to vent about the Giants because the Giants have been awful, and some of it I'm looking at. I'm like, all right, it's not all Daniel Jones. He hasn't been terrible. It's not as bad as it was looking earlier on, but I still got question marks. It's consistency for me with Daniel Jones, and really this team. This team has been at best inconsistent, and like if you really want to know how I feel about my Giants, take a look at my my recap after the Falcons game, where I said I want to thank the New York Giants, and I went down the line and I thanked them because they done I thanked them all and they done, and then they came back and pulled it out against New Orleans, and even then they still found a way to annoy the living daylights out of me. I'm like, even in a win, you guys suck. Same with Carolina, even when they suck, but it looked better against Carolina at least than it did New Orleans. But like this, listen, my whole perspective on football has changed quite a bit. I've taken note of things that I hadn't taken note of before, and it is what it is, man. But I appreciate anyone who's stuck around to watch this nonsense of me complaining about this damn team and where we are through the midway through roughly the midway point. Can the Giants beat the Chiefs? We'll see how that goes and whatnot. Win or lose, I'll probably still have complaints because the Giants, New York teams have just been. But that's for another video. Hope everyone's having a great day. I've held everyone here long enough. Anyone who's stuck around, I really appreciate it. Man. So until the next one, I'm Scrub Zero. Do not root for a sorry team. If you haven't started already, don't start now. And I shall catch you all on the flip side.